There was no way for Donald Trump to win that debate last night after about the first 10 minutes when you saw that the moderators' questions to Donald Trump would always start with a negative. You said this, and we fact-checked it, and you're wrong, or we don't believe that you're right. That you can't actually rely on local media news reports. You have to rely on whatever ABC says is the truth. And then when the questions went to Harris, it was just straight-up questions. She could answer however she wanted, and there was no pushback on her answers about what her actual plans were. So it was Donald Trump, really, versus 3. The question is, Harris wants another debate in October, which is interesting because usually if you thought you had destroyed your opponent in the debate, you would not be the first person out of the gate saying, I hope we have another debate. But what I think she believes is she's cut into Donald Trump, probably not significantly, but if she got one more opportunity at it, learning about what really can get under his skin and the right moderators, that it could be worth one more debate to then favor her going into actual election day.
The debate was pretty lackluster. I was really disappointed in David Muir and the ABC moderators. I think that, to me, was the number one takeaway from this, was how really unfair it seemed. Look, I'm no sitting here as a Donald Trump apologist, but it doesn't take anybody with any sort of news sense or political sense to watch that and not see really what it was. That was very disappointing. I think that you had the opportunity from the last debate to actually come out, have a fair debate, have these conversations. It was very clear up front that, as you said, questions were either pointed to President Trump that were all negative, and then when they were pointed to Kamala Harris, a lot of times they were pointed as also negatives to President Trump. There was very few times in that situation where it felt like it wasn't an attack. And to be honest, I got exhausted by it. When you got to an hour and a half plus, there were times when I was finding myself just tuning out because I couldn't really take it anymore. But what it does from the narrative that President Trump has been spinning for years is prove that the news is biased against him.
They fact-checked Trump 5 times live. No fact checks for Harris. As people said, you could see the questions for Harris were pretty much softballs. And even if they were kind of more straightforward, tougher questions, she could answer however she wanted, and they just moved on. They didn't follow up and say, really, you feel that differently about fracking? You feel that differently about the environment and the new Green Deal and all these other, going electric and defunding the police? How did you make this switch in just the last 3 years?
This is sort of a supercut of all the fact checks that happened on President Trump and, of course, did not happen on Vice President Harris.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals. I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
no
Republican.
Judge looked at it
and said
they said
no
we didn't have
widespread
standing.
fraud.
Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi.
Former Speaker Pelosi is the one who has the ability to protect the Capitol and call on the National Guard. That's her job, separate from the President of the United States. So that's what was talking about there. Talking about those reports about animals, they're everywhere, Logan, and they're not. Again, the idea that ABC said they couldn't get, would a city manager who is basically brought in to be someone who brings small businesses in to their city ever admit to the fact that our people's pets and the ducks in the pond were being taken by immigrants, Haitian immigrants, even if that was true? No, unless there were police reports. And there's probably not police reports, but there's plenty of reporting showing that it's like what they said about Aurora, that the Venezuelan gangs didn't take over. But I've been watching it on video for the last 2 weeks. They treated everything that Donald Trump said as a lie. And whenever Harris made any statement, she just got no second question. I mean, that's kind of what I took away last night, is that she could say whatever she wanted to about her policy changes, and they didn't push back on her. And Donald Trump couldn't even, before he even started, got a question, while the question to Donald Trump was being asked, the question was already a negative. Before he even answered, he already was on the defensive by the way the question was answered. So if you think the mainstream media is biased and not worth your time, it isn't. and it's really biased, horribly so.
You saw her distance herself from President Biden, maybe for the first time as clearly, because I feel like in the last times we've seen her interviewed, she's like, of course, I'm part of the team. I'm the vice president. His policies are my policies. But in this instance, he brought it up, and she specifically said, "You're not running against Joe Biden."
Yeah.
Almost threw Joe Biden under the bus publicly.
When in fact, policy-wise, you are.
Pretty much exactly the same.
She is the vice president currently of Joe Biden. She cannot run away as much as she would like to. But the media didn't fact check her there. They didn't stop her there and say, but you have been there, like President Trump said, for 3.5 years. Why did you not bring this idea to Joe Biden, these tax credits, so that the economy could improve if you really believe it would, and bring inflation numbers down? Why hold all these policies until now if you're supposed to be an advisor to the president? I mean, take a listen to President Trump on these ideas that Harris kept throwing out without a plan.
She doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Logan, you went through that plan that day that those policy plans went up.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they were pretty generic, and a lot of them were. We know from the metadata.
And yes, a lot
they
of
were copied and pasted right from Joe Biden. So she says she's not Joe Biden, but her policy page is. She says I'm not Joe Biden, but she is Joe Biden's vice president. So she owns that entire record, like it or not. And so those policies have not been working. We see less Americans getting jobs in the jobs report and more foreign-born workers getting jobs. We see the inflation numbers continuing to make it tough on Americans to buy a home, to the grocery bills, the gas bills, everything. It's just been a tougher time, and you see the world at war with kind of no end in sight. This debate showed me one main thing. One, it wasn't a knockout by anyone. I don't care what the media is saying about that. It wasn't. Okay, Donald Trump's got a big campaign and a big support base, and Harris has got a big campaign and a major support base too with the Democrat Party. They have 2 major parties behind them. This is going to come down to who has the better turnout machines, because ideologically, you're not going to. These people are so different.
Yeah.
You're not going to sway them even on style. There's neither. I mean, some of their. I don't think her style is particularly likable either. So it's kind of like, pocketbook. Who do you think is going to be better for you economically and for your family? And I think that's not a bad decision to start from, even as a person of faith, because that's going to impact your church, your community. That's going to affect the kind of health of your community. Are people able to find jobs? Are they able to kind of get themselves out of tough situations? Or are we kind of spiraling into this country where the middle class no longer exists?